When Scottish-born vocalist Sheila Walsh joined the 700 Club in 1988 as a co-host, her humor, honesty, and vulnerability quickly made her a fan favorite. For the next 5 years, she interviewed celebrities, athletes, and authors, and shared the love of Christ with millions of viewers. On the surface, everything was fine. Then, in 1992, without warning, Sheila left the job and ministry she loved.
Well, please welcome former 700 Club co-host, best-selling author, and Women of Faith speaker, Sheila Walsh. Sheila, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks. It's lovely to be here.
Just watching those old clips, I tell you, you were always this energy, this ball of Scottish fire.
I had so much fun with your dad. Just because, you know, it's funny, there's so many sides to your dad. I mean, he's a brilliant man. He has a tremendous anointing. But he actually, you can have a lot of fun with your dad, too. He likes to laugh.
Oh. There are limits.
There are limits, although there were many times when the crew would say to me, okay, you're definitely fired today.
You likely got a pass. You got a pass. I wouldn't get.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can take him to certain limits, but there's some boundaries. Anyway, back to you. You were the Scottish ball of fire, but underneath all of that, there was another story going on.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that a lot of us know that there's something not right, but when it's not something that you can see on an X-ray, it's hard to seek help for what you can't name. I mean, for years and then months and then the final weeks, I just felt as if I was disappearing a little bit more every day. I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, panicking. I mean, literally on my knees saying, Lord, please help me. I feel like I'm dying. I would forget things really easily. I would be interviewing a guest and couldn't remember what I just asked them and what I'm supposed to ask them next. It's a very scary thing. And this, you know, a lot of people say, well, just come on, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing. It's not like just feeling a bad day. It's this overwhelming hopelessness and sadness.
I think a lot of people that say that don't understand that there's something happening chemically. Hormones are involved. I mean, there's a whole bunch of interactions occurring that you literally don't have any control over.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that's hard about it, Gordon. A lot of people go untreated because they're either told by their pastor or their church, you know, we don't believe in that. You just need to pray more or confess your sin. And you wouldn't say that to somebody, you know, who fell off a swing and broke their leg. You wouldn't say, come on, just get up and walk. You would look to see if there's a problem and deal with the problem. But there's a stigma attached to any kind of mental illness, and particularly in the church. If I had a brain tumor, I mean, man, we'd get prayer groups going all around the world for that. But tell somebody you're struggling with a mental illness. And I think that's why so many people are pushed to the edge of suicide, because they feel hopeless with no even ray of hope.
And I think we need to change some of the names for it, because the names carry a very negative stigma. And I'm hearing they're going to change post-traumatic stress disorder into post-traumatic injury.
Wow.
So that that's
a much more accurate depiction of what really has happened.
You get rid of the stigma, and the brain, just like any other organ, can be injured.
Right.
What was going on, you know, you got a letter from a viewer, so something was being projected by you, that someone had the insight to say, you have pain.
That letter touched me so deeply. It was an older viewer, a faithful viewer, who actually was struggling herself. She had cancer. But in her letter, she said, I don't know what's going on with you, my dear, but I can see it in your eyes. Please get help. And, I mean, that letter just broke something in me. The thought that somebody actually saw beyond, you know, the makeup and the holding myself together, and cared enough to say it's okay not to be okay. You actually could go and get help. It's one of the greatest gifts that anyone has ever given me.
Well, why do we not want to get help?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Someone who was a good friend of your dad's, and actually a man that I respected tremendously on most days, apart from this one day. The day that I actually was going to go to the hospital, this gentleman walked me around the lake at the Founder's Inn and said, can I just put it to you that perhaps you're just the weak link in the chain? You know, Pat's a godly man, surrounded by godly men, and maybe the enemy's trying to use you to destroy this ministry. And I was devastated because I already felt so helpless. And the thought that the enemy would be using me to try and harm a ministry that means the world to me.
I know you're trying to keep him anonymous, but I think I know who it is.
I'll tell you later.
I'll keep that. I think I know who that one is. But particularly if you're in ministry.
Yeah.
And I'll add a lot, you know, why not put politics in that, or anybody in show business, anybody with a public profile, to admit that you have a problem and you need to get help for that problem. There's a whole bunch of shame that comes with that. Yeah,
and even after I spent a month in the hospital, Gordon, and then, you know, your dad said, look, why don't you come back on the show one time and just, you know, thank the viewers who've prayed for you and, you know, kind of fill them in on the next part of your journey. But one or two of the staff and the producers felt, look, don't tell them where you've been. Just tell them you were overstressed, overworked, you took some time off. And I said, look, honestly, not telling the truth is what got me in that place in the first instance. So I have to. And I think they basically thought, well, it's your funeral. And I understood that. You know, one said to me, if people know where you've been, no one will ever trust you again. And so we pre-taped the interview to make sure that I wasn't seeing flying dogs or drooling on myself, which I managed not to do for that segment.
I think you managed to do that most days.
But there's just this, people are scared of what they don't understand.
Talk to the viewers. This is a common problem. This isn't unusual. A lot of people suffer with depression, either chronically or occasionally. And it's January, so that occasional is kicking in full steam right now.
Right.
What would you tell them?
Well, I think there's some depression that's purely situational. You're going through a bad season, and you know you'll get through it, and you just hang in there, and you have good friends. Some depression like mine is a chronic condition. I'll probably be on medication the rest of my life. Because this was 23 years ago, and I still take that little pill every morning with a prayer of thanksgiving that the help is available. So I would say, don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, go to your doctor and explain how you're feeling. Don't be ashamed to do that. I found that counseling was just as important as getting treatment. I found a wonderful godly counselor who said, you know, Sheila, Jesus hasn't come to get you out of this. He's come to live in you through it. And I found that even in the midst of my brokenness, the presence of Christ was so real.
And I think it's important to underline the twofold nature of both the treatment and the cause. Yes, there are chemical reasons for depression, but there's also trauma reasons for depression.
Right.
And for you, what was the root?
Oh, my father had a massive brain injury when I was 5, and he tried to kill me. And I think that children are the best recorders of information, but they're the poorest interpreters of that. So even now as an adult, I can think, well, of course my father was not in control of that day when he tried to bring his cane down on my skull. But at 5, you can't
erase that. Right.
So all I knew was I had done something terrible, or my father saw something terrible in me, and that almost destroyed me for years. And it's why I lived a very public, very lonely life. I kept a wall around myself. And I would reach over the wall and help you or pray for you if you needed it, but nobody got back into me in case you saw what my father saw.
Well, why did that give you such a profound sense of rejection that you projected that into every other relationship?
Because he was my dad, and I was very much a daddy's girl. My sister was kind of what every mother hopes for, you know, the well-behaved one that wears, you know, ribbons and things, and I was a tomboy. I adored my father. He was the closest person to me on this earth. So when that person not only tries to take you out, but that morning, what I remember more than the noise was the look in his eyes of absolute hatred. And I took that in, I absorbed that. And I thought, there is something in me that is so deeply flawed that if you let anyone else get too close, and even when I became a Christian when I was 11, and I realized that now I have God, the Father, I thought, well, you are never going to see whatever my dad saw. Because I blew it the first time, I will not blow it the second time. I'll be the perfect Christian woman if it kills me. And it nearly did. And
so as layers of behavior from a traumatic trigger, you then started behaving, I'll never let that happen again.
Absolutely. And I think that people, we wear masks to survive, to cope. Some people use drugs or alcohol or sex. I found the perfect place to hide, Christian ministry. I mean, who's going to say to you, put that Bible down or we're going to have an intervention? I mean, it's not going to happen.
Right.
But only God knows.
Stop being so good.
Yes, you little monkey. But, I mean, only God knows if you're ministering out of pain or out of a genuine passion. And I think that's what's ridiculously amazing about the merciful love of God. That he saw I was just surviving, but Jesus said, I've come to give you life, not survival. I've come to give you life. And I think God had to remove everything I depended on to show me that he lives very close to those who are on the floor.
Has he shown you that he was there with you in that moment?
In the moment where my father was there?
Yeah.
Yes. It was, and actually only recently. It was really interesting. I had it's a strange experience one morning. My family and I had been through a little bit of a crisis, which, you know, we sought God's help for and we got through it. But I found myself having feelings again of that thing of thinking everything's my fault. And I was in the shower one morning and I felt the Lord say to me, Sheila, I was there that day. You were not alone. I was there. And I was the one who protected you. My memory is that I pulled the cane or I pushed it. But when I think about that, I think, well, if I had, my dad would have landed on me or he would have landed behind me. He didn't. He landed right beside me. And I felt as if the Lord was saying, listen, you were never alone for a moment. I was there. You didn't choose to live over your father. I chose that you would live.
What did that do to you?
It set me free. It set me free from feeling as if I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop or that I owe the world everything, that I have to get it right. Part of it now is that I'm 57, so I don't feel I have to get it right anymore. And if you write nasty emails, I'm not going to reply to them.
There's
part of it is
great release when you get older.
But
you don't
part of it is just
care
this
as much.
thinking. And it went back to my baptismal verse, which was from John 15. You did not choose me. I chose you and appointed you that you would go and bear fruit and that your fruit would abide.
All right. Well, if you want to learn more about Sheila's story, her book, Love Back to Life, is available nationwide and wherever books are sold. And Sheila is going to be with us later. Well, this is 700 Club Interactive, where we interact with you. And if you have a need in depression, if you want someone to pray with you, we're here for you. And Sheila is going to be praying.